and we'd like to welcome you back to another episode of the Outside 50 podcast presented by usfootynews.com. As always, Rick Shaibani here alongside Tara Silke and Ben Martinez. G'day, guys.
Hi there, Rick. How you doing?
Solid.
Glad to be back for another podcast.
Absolutely. And and we finally have one of my fellow Dragons around, Simon Ansell. How you doing?
Yeah, g'day, Rick. Thanks for the invite, and thanks for coming on, guys. I was a bit worried you might have been scraping the barrel asking me to come and talk about footy, but let's see how we go, eh?
Yeah, why not? We haven't had many Sydney-siders featured, so I reckon Simmo should consider himself lucky. Huh, guys?
Yes, for sure.
Oh, no, we don't discriminate against Swan supporters.
No.
At least not most of the time. So, but yes, Simmo, let's get right into it. As I know, but many other people don't, you've been here in LA for a couple of years, and you're from Sydney. What originally brought you this way, and how'd you find the Dragons?
It's actually nearly 2 years to the date. I'm under 10 days before my 2-year anniversary here. I just got a job opportunity to come over here and live in the US. Quick story: working in the aviation industry. So I'd spent a grand total of one night in Los Angeles before I signed a contract to actually come and live here. So I knew absolutely nothing about the city and so forth. And I remember sitting with a couple of colleagues a few weeks before I moved over here and joked about, maybe I'll have a look and see whether there's a footy team in LA or not, or at least a bunch of Aussies that don't mind having a kick around the park and so forth. And the LA Dragons was the first thing that showed up in Google, and had a look at the website and saw a few of the boys' profiles and on there, and nicknames and so forth. And a couple of my colleagues joked and said, it'd be funny if you end up on that website. And a couple of those boys, and they actually pointed out a couple of the guys and said, you'll end up being good mates of him, or you two will get along and so forth. It just came over sort of into the cyclone of my job straight away, but was able to get in touch with the guys at the club. And I think my first training session, I showed up straight from work and was trying to kick a footy in my R.M. Williams boots, and apparently impressed them still that they invited me to come back again. So, that was pretty much what brought me over here, Rick. It's just a fun story to come and have people that love footy just as much as you do, and I've had the opportunity to play over here a little bit as well, which has been great.
Yeah, it's always been a good time having a kick with you, Simmo, and I'm just hoping that I was one of the faces that your colleagues were pointing out and being like, oh, he seems like a decent bloke, So, but no, we always love having you around, and it's been great to add another Aussie face to our South Bay contingency. So,
absolutely, mate. Yes, I'm an outlaw for life now from the Metro League. I will say this, Rick. You're one of the most welcoming guys at the club to start with, mate. So you're a testament to everything the Dragons is about, buddy.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
So, Simmo, what's been your thoughts on the league, on the level of not just the skill level, but also the the talent, Americans and Australians that are over here compared to where you've come from?
So I've played in a few areas. I've played obviously in Sydney. I played in the Canberra League as well, and did try and play in a Victorian league. So I've obviously played with some highly skillful footballers. I won't include myself into that, because if my mates knew I was trying to do that, then they would probably call a bit of BS on it. But the skill level over here, I actually find that it's it's a big variance between the top talent and the bottom talent, and I mean it's to be expected. But there's some really really skillful American footballers over here that if you could really enhance the game and so forth, there's the athleticism side of it. A lot of the guys here have got. It's probably just a bit more of the skill set on how to kick the ball right and try and do a hand pass and so forth. But I think it's pretty easy to sit there as an Aussie and suggest that all of that stuff should come naturally when it does to us, when it's pretty alien to everyone over here. But I've been happily surprised by the skill level from a lot of them, and how quick some of the guys do pick it up as well.
Excellent. That seems to be the general consensus of people when they come over. They're really impressed by the quality.
Yeah, it's funny because I mean, some expats come over here and they just assume it's 2 or 3 Aussies having a kick and a few frothies afterwards, and they're consistently surprised that it functions like a legitimate league with legitimate clubs. And but no, it's great to have that mixture of athletic Americans and experienced Aussies in LA, because obviously we have a bit of an advantage because we were talking to the Des Moines Footy Club the other day, Donnie over there, and he was saying that Des Moines, small city, most of the Aussies they do have, which isn't a huge amount, are just there because they married a Yank and they moved over this way. But obviously in LA, we have a lot of guys on E3 visas who are staying here for a decent amount of time, or people who are dual citizens, or there's a whole number of different people from all over Australia who arrive in LA and stick around for a while. So I reckon we're pretty lucky when it comes to retaining a lot of the Aussie talent. And of course, with the homegrown American talent we have, 3 Revos players alone, or I guess 4, because Ryan McGettigan's he's with us now, but he's going to be moving back east soon, unfortunately. So, but yeah, we've been really lucky, and now it's just a question of kind of putting it all together so we can actually win a flag in Div 1.
Absolutely. That it's. I probably think, Rick, that the LA sort of probably the Dragons have been a little bit of an underachiever in Div 1, and that's probably a few of the boys when they listen to this, they'll probably try and lynch me for it. But I think LA's got that. It's got that climate, that the athleticism and the population. It's also, probably got one of the highest concentrations of Aussies over here as well to really build a strong nucleus of the team. So, but I think it's gotten a little bit. Certainly, in the couple of years I've been here, it's sort of you get a few people that blow in and out of the club a little bit and play, and I'll be the first one to admit I haven't played all the games here through work commitments, and generally I pick up an injury or 1 or 2. That's been the story of my footballing career, is one injury to another. But it's certainly something that you kind of would expect if you said to someone and said, right, which would be the best football teams in the US, and you would probably sort of say, right, well, where's the highest concentration of Aussies going to be? And you would sort of say, your LAs, your San Frans, and your New Yorks, because they're the common ones that we would sort of suggest that Aussies are travelling to. So I think when the season does get started, I think the Dragons are sort of in that point where they've got a lot to try and prove to everyone that they can actually be that top Div 1 team. And they've probably just sort of missed the mark a little bit over the years after sort of the build up that's got to the last couple of years. So yeah, there's a lot to prove, I think.
Yeah, there's definitely a challenge in terms of getting all the different players involved and keeping them involved from year to year. Because you're right, Simmo, work happens, family things happen. It can definitely be challenging to keep that level of commitment from year to year. But obviously, and also just like carrying that momentum over the course of a whole season, because the season's long. It's just as long as it is down in Australia. And obviously, it's different up here in a lot of ways, but it's similar in terms of like not peaking too early and not peaking too late. So there's definitely a lot of variables in play, but we're getting close, and that's what matters.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the strong nucleus of having a good team is getting those good American players in. The Aussie players tend to sort of look after themselves because there's the Aussies who are going to reach out to play footy overseas here are generally guys who've played quite a bit back home. They're not always going to be just someone who goes, "Hey, I've never done that before. I might come and play it in another country." So you tend to get that talent coming through the club as it is, which the Dragons has got an absolute plethora of Aussie talent in it, and as you said, the Resis guys that are there as well, or the Revies guys, not Resis guys, are there, and it's just trying to get the continuity of that team playing all consistently, and playing well, which I think has been the challenge over the last couple of years. And it'll be a challenge. I think it'll be a challenge this year while everyone's chomping at the bit to get out and start training and start playing now. Things like the pandemic we're dealing with could easily sort of start to turn people away from it, or players, and a lot of Australians have had to go back home and so forth. So it's gonna be interesting when we do finally get back to playing on who it'll be, who that team will be. So it could be a big chance for someone a team that's a little less known, to really make a big feature at Nationals later this year.
Yeah, what do you think is that your club does the best, and like, what do you think is the biggest improvement? And also, since you play with Rick, what is the most annoying habit on the field?
Most annoying habit on field from Rick. Gee. Oh, mate, I can't bag you on your own podcast. No, I think Rick's. I'd actually sort of say that the Rick's best attribute out there is he's just always gun ho. He'll still just keep going and going hard, and doing all of that. And certainly in the 2 years, I'm actually looking forward to seeing Rick play now after a year down in Victoria under his belt playing, and see the development and the growth that's come from there, because it certainly acts like a sponge around the club. So I'm really excited to see him when he gets back playing. And probably what we do well, I think, as a club, I think we get in. We have a bit of a grunt. We'll go in and get pretty hard on the ball. I think particularly the Aussies and the Americans we've got, they're not afraid of a bit of contact. That's one sort of thing that I noticed the difference from playing back home to playing over here is it's a little less like aggressive at the ball and the harder contact at the ball. And I don't know whether that's because the Americans that play are used to having padding and helmets and that on, and when you tell them all they're going to wear as a mouth guard, they tend to get a little bit more sheepish about it. But it doesn't seem as intense. But a lot of the LA guys are sort of drummed into harder contact on the ball and that. And I think that's kind of one of the things I've seen us do well, is that we get in and we'll have a scrap and we'll have a bit of a fight. And you've got some really good polish around the field as well. So, but yeah, that's what I would say. I think I carefully avoided critiquing Rick's ability as a footballer on the field.
Something like that. Appreciate the kind words, Simmo. And yeah, I think you're right. Like, we have a lot of size on our side. We've got D-Rock, we got Sammy, we got Patty, 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" type of guys. But I think the biggest strength that we have right now is our engine room. We've got some really talented on-ballers, some really physical guys who played a lot of footy. They've got a lot of playing time under their belts, whether they're American or Aussie or Danish. Shout out to Mr. Freddie Shulin. But no, yeah, it's really good to have that group of talent in the guts, because that's where it all starts. That's where it all happens. And that's the key to being a great consistently winning side is having a midfield that is always clicking on all cylinders, and I think we do a good job of that. And kind of going back to your background, Simmo, what was it like? You're from New South Wales, and obviously
Yep.
Sydney's a rugby town, has been for a very long time, and footy's not the main sport in schools, or historically it hasn't been at least. What was it like growing up in that type of environment where it's one of the places in Australia where footy, or that version of footy, isn't the dominant code?
Well, where I grew up was actually the very heartland of rugby league. I grew up in the same town as Andrew and Matthew Johns. For anyone who would know the rugby league greats, Andrew Johns probably the greatest halfback of all time in rugby league. So talking about AFL up there was obviously they didn't call it AFL, and I won't refer to what they actually called it to, but it was certainly referred to in not so glowing terms. So for me, it was rugby league or nothing else. So I actually played a little bit of that when I was younger, and it wasn't sort of until I got out of home and moved to Canberra that I started to get far more exposed to it. I used to watch it on the TV, and for the first few times I watched it, I didn't understand it, but I liked what I was watching. I got excited about it, and I particularly really started to get right on the bandwagon back in 05 when my mighty Swans broke the longest drought for not winning an AFL premiership, and and that was really when it really started to kick on. And whilst I didn't get to start actually playing for a few more years after that, I really started to follow it and understand it and learn about it more. I would have goalposts set up around the house, so I'd be trying to kick a few sausage rolls around the house with my brother and so forth like that. And when I got to Canberra, I got the opportunity to start playing because you started to really blend into that environment with more sort of the Victorians and that sort of country New South Wales down around Cootamundra and Wagga and so forth like that. They really do start to blend both of that rugby league, and it sort of it merges as the further south you go, the more it merges into people wanting to play AFL. And let's face it, it's a far better sport than rugby league, and it's a far more exciting sport than rugby union. And that's probably why it's so religiously followed by the Victorians, but it's growing across the entire country.
It definitely is. And obviously you've got largely the success of the Swans and the Brisbane Lions to thank for that. And yeah, you talked about, like, obviously Canberra has a decent sized AFL community. GWS plays up there a few times a year, and it's kind of half rugby, half AFL compared to Sydney, which is mostly league. But yeah, you get to the Riverina part of the country, like right on the border of Victoria, and it feels just like Victoria because it's crazy about AFL, just like the rest of Victoria is, even though it's across the river. But yeah, I'm sure that was a great feeling to have because, even though I grew up here in the US, of course, I never really had a niche sport growing up. I did martial arts, I did basketball, I played a little bit of rugby union when I was in uni, but I never really had something that I could really sink my teeth into. And then I found footy, and I'm like, awesome, I can actually stay fit as an adult and also find a sport that is, genuinely not just physically demanding, but just incredibly fun to play. So it's a great feeling when you can finally find something that really suits your personality.
Yeah, and I just remembered I now have a fault for Rick. He's a Giant supporter, so that's his problem. That's his biggest on-field problem is he's a Giant supporter.
I was waiting for you to mention that. I'm disappointed.
Yeah, you reminded me as soon as you talked about GWS. I went, yep, righto, that's it. He's a Giant supporter.
There could be worse teams, Rick.
He could be worse. He could be Collingwood. He could be a whole heap of other teams. So
definitely. No, there certainly could be worse teams. So that's okay, Rick. Give you kudos there.
And just so you know, Simmo, Ben's an Eagles man, so I'm sure you guys will have a
Maroons fan. So I'm the double threat there. So
Jeez.
2005 to 2013 were really good years.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
They certainly were.
Yeah.
Yes.
It kind of aligned perfectly with the Swans' popularity growth. It was one of those running jokes I remember at back in Australia was like, oh look at all the New South Wales teams at work. They were all suddenly Swans supporters. Last year they were Blues fans. Now they don't care about it. So
Yeah. Oh God, it's been really interesting since the Buddy Franklin came to the club. It's almost became, before I was over here, there was a really interesting piece, opinion piece written that it being a Swans member or a Swans supporter had become the sort of thing in Sydney to do. So you had to be seen at a Sydney Swans game because that's where, and you get the very typical Sydneyites. They come dressed up in their suit and so forth, and their tie, or get really dressed up for the game, and all they'd have is a scarf on. And they wouldn't know what they were watching, but they would be seen at a game because that was the thing to do there at one stage. So I don't think it's so much now because the Swans are sort of heading in the wrong direction. But it's been really interesting watching the evolution of the Swans and the Swan supporters and Sydney people towards AFL. I think, its membership was up to about 64,000, which is, you could take pretty much the majority of the NRL teams in Sydney and combine all their membership and still be very close, if not, less than what the total Swans supporters membership was. But outside of that membership, there wasn't a lot of other people who would follow it. So it's a very tight-knit sort of community of people who just want to be seen at a game. They couldn't name you any other player aside from Lance Franklin, and they probably couldn't even tell you how the game plays.
It's crazy.
And that's me having a go at my fellow Sydney-siders.
Yeah, no, it's crazy to think about how quickly it's grown up there, and it might be a fair weather fan thing, but at the same time, in terms of the grassroots footy participation rates, it's definitely growing very, very quickly. And I love what GWS is doing. I mean, they're a young club, but they have 25,000 members right now, and they do a lot of great stuff in the community, like Western Sydney. It's arguably even more rugby league dominant than the city of Sydney itself. And they do a lot of great work in the community, whether it's like school outreaches or a lot of those neighborhoods are pretty heavily immigrant neighborhoods. And a lot of them don't really know much about AFL, or they don't yet. But the Giants do a really good job at reaching out to these communities and trying to get the love for the game installed in an early age.
Oh, mate, that's just what the AFL does. It makes a mockery of the other codes, even soccer to some stage, which is generally the sport that most parents want their kids to go into because it's perceived as in they won't get injuries and so forth. But the development that the AFL does in Australia for the younger community is really what drives a lot of membership. It drives a lot of uptake on it, and it does make a mockery of rugby league, and a league still doesn't know how to combat it because it's largely seen as this sort of thuggery type sport, and they can't really get a lot of that younger crowd to do it and play. But the NAB Auskick stuff back home is just it's absolutely fantastic how it's run, and that's the big reason why it's the number one sport in the country.
Yeah, to kind of bring it back to US footy, and since we've been talking about rivalries and stuff like that, who has been your favorite team to play, and who are you most looking forward to coming up?
The favorite team to play that I've actually played, that I've been on the park to play, probably playing probably against Denver, even though we got absolutely walloped the last game that we were over there. The guys on that team were really, they weren't being hugely smug about it, which was good. They were being slightly smug, but that was all right. But the way they play, the way they went about it, we were clearly undermanned in that game. If you had me playing in the guts, then we were definitely undermanned. But no, I think playing against Denver's probably been the team that I've sort of enjoyed the most playing against. And if there was a team that I get to play against, which I don't know if it'll ever happen, it would probably be against Chicago because it's against the Swans. So, and if I had my time again, I'd move to Chicago so I could just say I played for the Swans.
Nice.
But no, probably definitely playing against some of the better teams. Playing against Austin, playing against New York, obviously against San Fran as well. You always want to play against the better teams because you want that challenge, you want that class of football being played around. It's not always that fun beating up on someone who doesn't have the skill level that you've got, or it's an undermanned team and that. So, but yeah, playing against the best, but secretly playing against the Swans would be fun.
That would be a fun game. Chicago's up and coming, and they're definitely getting better, so it'd be a good matchup. You said that you might not get a chance to play, so what are you doing while all this COVID stuff is going on? What are you doing to stay in shape? What is the team and club doing to kind of work during this time? I see you guys are a lot of active on social media. You guys put out some really fun videos recently. So what else are you guys doing?
Well, I'd actually, due to just constant injuries, I think I've broken nearly every finger on both my hands. I was actually considering hanging up the boots, more so because the boots were now broken, and it was talking about investing in more money for another pair of boots. But I was going to sort of move into a bit more of a role of helping with recruitment with the team, with the Dragons here, trying to get out and get those younger kids with a bit more energy and so forth into the club, and probably play from time to time. I think with some of the restrictions being relaxed with the COVID-19, the guys are going to start sort of training together in little pockets of 5 all around the place. So that'll be good to get out. I know a few of the guys have been busy chomping at the bit. They've been down the park kicking the ball around and so forth like that. So yeah, I think we've just been trying to keep together through our little WhatsApp group and keep everyone motivated, and really hope we do get back to playing some footy in that later at the end of the year. The positive bit is that the US AFL haven't gone to looking at cancelling the Nationals, which is exciting because it's here in California. So it's a really good time for all of us over here on the West Coast to be able to really get behind it. And no doubt there'll be a few people come out of the woodwork wanting to play if we do get back to playing, because it's so local. But yeah, I think it's been tough on a lot of guys trying to keep fit, trying to keep motivated, and trying to keep that spark of people wanting to come back and play. If you're not playing footy, it's pretty easy to forget about footy, and if there's nothing on TV as well about it, there's no, we've tried in the last 2 years to put a bit of our super coach together, and none of that stuff is happening. So you've got to try and keep people motivated in playing it, particularly at that amateur level, because people just sort of walk away from it and go and look and do something different. Yeah, that's probably about where it's at. It's going to be good to see some of the guys out having a kick and getting amongst it now with some of the restrictions being lifted.
Definitely. And yeah, I know you're super shattered about not being able to be the Super League guy again this year, Simmo, because I know you took a lot of pride in that last year, and you definitely took a lot of pride in winning most rounds.
I don't know what rounds you were paying attention to, Rick, but I came out of I came out of the stalls like a winner for about the first 9 rounds, and then the next 5 rounds after that I went backwards. I did win, but I won the minor league, not the major league. So I was the best of the rest. Just call me the McLaren of the LA Dragons super coach. So I wasn't up with the Ferraris and Red Bulls and and Mercedes with the guys up the top. I was a bit disappointed in you, Rick. You know, you could have.
Yeah. Hmm.
You were down in Australia, mate. You had the time zone on your favour. You had everything working for you, and
Yeah, I didn't get the wooden spoon though, and in my first year playing Super League, I'll count that as a win. So
You're a bit more of a Force India, were you, Rick, as opposed to a Ferrari?
something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something.
yeah. Well, it's all on our webpage. I can always dig out the scores, and I can show you where Rick was constantly down the bottom. He was consistent. We'll give him that.
Well, he was occupied playing in the playing in Victoria, so give him kudos for that.
Oh yeah, I'll give him a bit for that. But he was also the inside boss, the last minute changes. Trying to play Supercoach here in the US is like a nightmare. They make last minute changes. You got to be awake at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. The struggle is real.
So, Simmo, you're finding with everything going on with the pandemic, like you said, I mean, in your opinion, and with what the Dragons are doing, is this extra time that you're getting to dedicate to your fitness, that guys are getting to dedicate to their training? Do you think that's going to be an advantage? Is it going to pay some dividends? Are we going to see maybe some guys that are going to benefit from that extra 6 weeks of conditioning?
I think some will, and I think some won't. I think that's probably the hardest bit of the whole amateur sport thing, is that some guys will train well together, and some guys will train guys and girls will train well on their own, because at the end of the day, you're trying to motivate people to go out and do stuff on their own effectively. A couple of the guys have been training well together, and they're certainly getting the strength training up and running, because we're seeing it with all the videos that they send us all the time. But I think it'll be really interesting to see where everyone's skill level or where everyone's fitness is at. I think some people would have taken advantage of it and got out, and because exercise is pretty much the only thing you can do. And then there'll be others who might have got a little demotivated because they're a bit more about that whole team training environment. And you'd have to look at it it'll be an individual perspective on it. So I think some guys are going to come back and they're going to be looking fit and sharp and 100% on the training paddock, and then there'll be some guys that'll take a little bit longer to get back into it because they're finally back in their little team environment to work through it.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, and I think that can also apply to different teams. I mean, you'd like to think that all the real powerhouse Div 1 sides are still training the house down. I know Ben is doing a great job at that these days, but yeah,
doing what I can, Rick.
Exactly. That's what we're all doing. But yeah, you could potentially see a changing of the guard, so to speak, in terms of which team is going to really surprise people at nationals. Because if a certain team is fit and motivated, and it could be anyone, Div 1, Div 2, Div 3, it doesn't matter. Like if a team's really ready to surprise some people and pull off a few upsets, you never know what might happen. So obviously the Austins, the Golden Gates, the LAs, the New Yorks, the usual suspects are all going to be in the mix. But I reckon we're going to see at least a few dark horse teams really surprise some people. And again, it could be in any division, and even in women's footy too. So I think it's going to be really fascinating, even more so than in a typical year, because the elongated preseason has been so damn weird. So yeah.
You're absolutely right, mate. And I think I would not be surprised if some teams sort of go a little bit backwards, because this is like an unprecedented situation. So, a lot of people there have been a lot of people who've decided to move back home because their job situation has changed over here, whether they're breaching their visa or alike. And even if we start to get playing again, working in the aviation industry, knowing that the likelihood of international travel is going to be certainly dampened for a longer period of time than what domestic travel is going to be, whether that some clubs have lost some of their better players because they've gone back home for reasons associated with this pandemic, that they're not going to have the strength and the depth that they previously did have. Alternatively, it might make the stronger clubs even stronger because they've been able to retain their players, and because they've worked on their fitness and had that sort of professionalism that you associate with those Div 1 sides. So it would be quite interesting, but from my perspective, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a bit of a dark horse that really surprised everyone at nationals. Whether they take out the title or whether they end up, making the grand final or so forth like that. It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, that's very true. I think we've been training since February and haven't really stopped. So I know there's a couple teams out there that are definitely ready. But on that note, why should people play for the LA Dragons? What is the number one thing you would say? Why should people join the LA Dragons?
It's just California, isn't it? It's just beautiful weather. You can get stuck in traffic trying to get to training. What else is there better to do? The beaches are effectively shut now, so you may as well come and play for the footy. No, it's. I think the social. There's a good bunch of relaxed guys and girls who play for the club, and it's a great way to meet some Aussies. For the Americans who want to meet a couple of Aussies and know a few authentic Aussies in their life that enjoy sport and enjoy the same things as them. It's a really good opportunity to come out. The big thing for me is trying to get more Americans into playing the sport. Particularly the young crowd. I think that's the biggest challenge for a lot of clubs, is getting younger Americans to come and play it. I think the last 2 years, LA's been good to get a few get Americans into the club, new Americans, and expose them to the game, but they tend to be of closer to 30 than they are to 20, and even over 30 at times. And being nearly 37 myself, I know what it's like to be a bit over the hill when trying to play a sport like this and having rings run around you by a 19-year-old. So it'd be great to try and get that in there, but I think for LA, it's really got to push the social side to it, and just trying something new and getting out in the sun with a bunch of mates.
That sounds great. What do you guys most like to do when you're in your off season as an activity as a club then?
I think probably the party lifestyle probably suits a few of us. I think going down, catching up for a party and that. Again, I'm probably getting a bit too old for that sort of stuff. Here I am talking about being old at 37, but I do feel old around a few of the guys. No, I think that, and it's just sort of the weather here is always fantastic, so we can always go out and have a kick of the footy even in the middle of the off season, because it just you're not going to have to be trying to trudge around in 6 foot of snow, are you? So it does. I think that really does it well. There's a lot of banter amongst the club. A lot of the guys like to throw a lot of banter around. I think the Aussies try and drive that the most, but the American boys over here certainly stand on their own 2 feet when it comes to the banter. And yeah, I think we just try and stay as social as we can within reason. LA is not the easiest town to travel around and get about, but I think we do a pretty good.
Yeah, I'm definitely a big fan of the pub crawls. We usually try to have at least one per year as a team building exercise, or at least that's what we like to call it. But yeah, and I mean, we've got the biggest AFL grand final watch party in North America. So it's always a good time when we can have a club fundraiser and also pack in 500, 600 Aussies into a tiny little pub in Santa Monica. So it's definitely always a good time when we're able to just get around each other and have a few frothies and enjoy each other's company. So I definitely dig that angle. of the footy club, and I think everyone else has a good time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something we do well. We could do more of it, but we certainly make the most out of a city that is as complex to move around as in LA, and the bubbles of where we've got everyone positioned to play as well. We're very, very dispersed, but as Rick said, I think the pub crawls, and we do walk from pub to pub, so we try and keep fit as well. Doing that, we don't get Ubers and so forth like that around here. Make us, we try and keep it social as we can. I do see some of the other clubs that we've played against, and they certainly have their nice little nucleus that personally I get a little envious of. Like teams like San Diego, certainly the Denver guys, even the San Fran guys, you can see the nucleus that they've built, and I think that's probably just a little step that LA needs to work on, is really getting that stronger bubble amongst its players, and yeah.
Well, great. How can we best support the LA Dragons? What can people do to best support? How can we keep in touch with you guys?
Probably the usual things, the social media. Get out and follow us on Instagram. You'll even see me running for about 3 seconds there, absolutely blowing. This is what the coronavirus has done to me. I've never gone for a run in my life, and I've been out running. So, get out on Facebook and that. Reach out to us. I think we're always in the lookout for new sponsors, and certainly our social ideas and that. Even if it's someone who's not playing footy with us that lives in LA and's got a footy and they've been dealing with the coronavirus, they're missing a bit of footy in that, send us a video or something like that. But yeah, I think the social media stuff is probably one of the ways to really get out and support the club to start with. Reach out, and if we could get crowds to the games, we'd be absolutely laughing. But we'll take one step at a time.
Yeah, social media is huge for us. It's huge for everyone. So yeah, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Los Angeles Dragons Australian Football Club, and yeah, we definitely do a good amount of stuff in terms of like posting on Facebook groups, Aussies in LA, Aussies in California, things like that. And yeah, we alluded to it earlier, something like I think 40,000 Australians in Southern California. Obviously that includes, LA, San Diego, Orange County, Riverside, and I don't know if it's 40,000. They might be secretly sneaking in a few Kiwis to inflate the numbers, but no, yeah, it's still great to have that big expat community here in LA, and it's always good to run into people you might not know otherwise at social events or grand final parties or things like that. So yeah, we're definitely looking forward to the season, and I'm sure we'll land a handful of new faces. Again, just the fact that we'll be able to train in small groups here in the next few weeks is going to be huge. So again, there's still a lot of uncertainty in the air, but we're slowly getting there, and it's going to be good to get back together and have some type of training regimen to follow.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks so much for dropping by, Simmo. You're a legend. We appreciate you stopping by and telling us a little bit about your story. And yeah, hope to catch up with you sometime down the track once the season's officially underway. We do try to follow up with guests, or arrange to follow up with guests after, a little bit of a hiatus between episodes. But yeah, thanks again and best wishes.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, anytime you're, hopefully you're not scraping the barrel when you've got me back on. But yeah, anytime you want to have a chat about footy, I'll talk about footy until I go to sleep. So, yeah, thanks very much, and let's hope that we're back playing footy soon, and hopefully we're flattening the curve so that we can start kicking a few sausage rolls. That's for sure.
Outside 50 is brought to you with the help of Play Aussie USA. Play Aussie is the only place in the USA you can buy the famous Sharon football, a proud sponsor of the USAFL. Visit them at playaussie.com.